The modern financial world operates on a rigid binary timeline. There is the state of being current and the state of being delinquent. The transition between these two states is not gradual, it is instantaneous. At the precise moment a digital clock strikes midnight, crossing from a specific date to the next, a status changes within a server. This change is silent, it triggers no alarms and requires no human intervention. Yet this shift initiates one of the most pervasive, reliable revenue streams in the global economy. This is the mechanism of the late payment penalty. It is a system so integrated into the architecture of daily commerce that it is rarely examined as a standalone economic engine. It is generally viewed as a solitary event, a consequence of forgetfulness or a temporary lack of liquidity. However, when observed from a structural perspective, the late fee is not merely a punishment for a missed deadline. It is a carefully calculated product, designed with specific margins, expected yields, and predictable behaviors. It relies on the friction between human variability and automated precision. While the consumer views the fee as a mistake to be corrected, the system views it as a function to be executed. It is a silent accumulation of capital gathered in small increments from millions of sources, creating a vast, invisible economy built entirely on the concept of time and delay. This structure appears in almost every facet of contractual life. It is present in housing, through rent and mortgage agreements. It is foundational to the credit card industry. It exists in utility services, telecommunications, and, increasingly, in subscription-based models for software and entertainment. In each instance, the premise is identical. A service is provided in exchange for payment by a specific time, and the failure to meet that time results in a financial addition to the principal cost. On the surface, the logic appears administrative. The explanation often provided is that a late payment creates friction. It requires additional processing, sends automated reminders, or disrupts the cash flow of the provider. Therefore, a fee is levied to cover these operational costs and to deter future lateness. This rationale is widely accepted because it aligns with a basic understanding of cause and effect. If an agreement is broken, a price is paid. Because the individual amounts are often relatively small, $30 here, $50 there, they rarely trigger a forensic analysis by the payer. A late fee is seen as a nuisance, a friction to be smoothed over and forgotten. It is psychologically categorized differently than interest or principal. It is viewed as an error cost rather than a service cost. However, the ubiquity of these fees suggests they are more than just administrative buffers. In many billing cycles, the cost of processing a late digital payment is negligible. The automation required to flag an account, apply a fee, and send a notification costs fractions of a cent in electricity and computing power. Yet the fee charged is often hundreds or thousands of times higher than the actual cost incurred by the institution. This disparity reveals that the fee is not merely compensatory. It is a revenue vertical. The presence of the penalty is anticipated in the financial modeling of the service provider. The expectation is not that 100% of customers will pay on time. Rather, the expectation is that a statistically significant percentage will not. The system is designed to accommodate and monetarily benefit from this margin of error. It normalizes the late payment not as a failure of the system, but as a feature of the revenue model. To understand the mechanics, one must look at the incentives embedded in the financial infrastructure. The late payment penalty operates on a decoupling of cost and price. In a traditional goods market, prices are often tethered to the cost of production. In the penalty market, the price is tethered to what the market will bear and what the regulatory environment permits. When a payment deadline is missed, two distinct financial gears begin to turn. The first is the flat fee. This is a regressive charge, meaning it hits the balance regardless of the amount owed. A missed payment on a $50 balance often incurs the same penalty as a missed payment on a $500 balance. When annualized, the effective interest rate on these smaller balances, driven by the fee alone, can reach astronomical percentages. This creates a high-yield return on low-balance accounts that might otherwise be unprofitable for the issuer. The second gear is the adjustment of risk standing. A late payment often triggers a clause that allows for an increase in the interest rate applied to the entire debt. This is where the compounding effect takes hold. The system recategorizes the account holder from a standard risk to a high risk. This recategorization justifies a higher cost of borrowing, often applied retroactively or to future transactions. The late fee is the entry point. The increased interest rate is the long-term engine. From the perspective of the institution, this structure serves as a hedge. It assumes that credit and service provision carry inherent risks. By monetizing the behavior of the riskiest or most disorganized segment of the customer base, the institution subsidizes the stability of the system. The predictable revenue from penalties helps offset the potential losses from defaults. Furthermore, the automation of this system is total. Algorithms monitor incoming capital flows. They are programmed with specific grace periods, or the lack thereof. These algorithms do not account for intent. A payment missed due to a technical glitch, a hospital stay, or a simple lapse in memory is treated with the exact same rigor as a payment missed due to insolvency. The system is binary. The funds are either present by the deadline or they are not. This automation creates a highly efficient extraction mechanism. There is no negotiation phase during the triggering event. The fee is applied instantly. While it can sometimes be waived later through human customer service interaction, the default state is the imposition of the cost. This shifts the burden of labor onto the account holder to undo the charge rather than requiring the institution to justify it. The inertia of the system favors the collection of the fee. The persistence of this system relies heavily on human psychology and behavioral design. It remains largely invisible to scrutiny because of how it interacts with the concept of shame and personal responsibility. When a penalty is incurred, the immediate reaction of the individual is often self-directed frustration. The narrative is internal. I forgot, or I should have managed this better. Because the late fee is framed as a consequence of personal error, it bypasses the critical lens usually applied to external prices. Consumers comparison shop for the best interest rates or the lowest monthly premiums, but they rarely comparison shop for late fee structures. The assumption is always that the fee will not apply to them because they intend to pay on time. This phenomenon is known in behavioral economics as present bias or overconfidence in future behavior. People generally overestimate their future organizational skills and liquidity. Contracts are signed with an optimistic view of the future. The late fee is buried in the terms and conditions, a hypothetical number that only becomes real when the mistake is made. By the time the fee is relevant, the contract is already in force. Design also plays a crucial role in this invisibility. In digital interfaces and paper statements, the amount due and due date are prominent. The penalty terms are often located in the footnotes or a separate fees and information section. The warning is present, but it is passive. It does not demand attention until the threshold is crossed. Moreover, the terminology itself softens the impact. It is called a fee or an adjustment, neutral terms that sound administrative. If it were labeled a short-term high-interest loan or a delinquency tax, the consumer reaction might be more hostile. The language maintains a professional distance, framing the transaction as a standard operational procedure rather than a profit-seeking mechanism. There is also the factor of cognitive bandwidth. Financial complexity has increased over time. The average individual manages multiple subscription services, credit lines, and utility accounts, each with different billing cycles and due dates. The mental load required to track these variable timelines creates a statistical probability of error. The system is designed to harvest this specific type of cognitive fatigue. It captures value from the inevitable slips in management that occur in a high-complexity environment. As this structure scales across millions of accounts and industries, the impact shifts from individual inconvenience to macroeconomic trend. The aggregation of late fees creates a massive transfer of wealth, flowing primarily from those with cash flow volatility to institutions with capital stability. Structurally, this creates a form of cross-subsidization. The customers who pay on time, the transactors who use services without triggering penalties, are effectively utilizing a system that is partially funded by those who do pay penalties. The operational costs of credit card rewards programs, free checking accounts, or zero-interest promotional periods are often underpinned by the revenue generated from the penalty pool. The efficiency of the free market for the prime customer is supported by the costs levied on the subprime or disorganized customer. This dynamic creates a normalization of debt cycles. For individuals living paycheck to paycheck, a late fee is not just a nuisance, it is a reduction in available capital for the next cycle. A $50 fee represents a significant portion of disposable income for a low-wage worker. When this fee is applied, it increases the likelihood of a shortfall in the subsequent month, increasing the probability of another fee. This is the trap aspect of the structure. It can convert a temporary liquidity problem into a chronic solvency problem. Yet from the institutional view, this is the system working as intended. It separates the customer base into tiers of profitability. Interestingly, the perfect customer, one who pays in full on time every time and never incurs interest or fees, is not necessarily the most profitable customer. The most profitable customer is often the one who remains in the system, carrying a balance, paying fees, but never defaulting entirely. The late payment penalty is a key component in identifying and cultivating this segment. The normalization of these fees also influences corporate strategy. Companies that might otherwise focus on product innovation or service quality may find that optimizing fee structures provides a more reliable return on investment. It incentivizes the creation of complex billing cycles and rigid deadline structures. If a simplified, flexible payment system were introduced, it would likely reduce the incidence of late fees, thereby reducing revenue. Therefore, there is a structural disincentive to make payment systems perfectly intuitive or forgiving. The friction is profitable. The ecosystem of the late payment penalty is quiet, pervasive, and efficient. It does not require malice to function. It requires only math and the predictable nature of human imperfection. It is a system built on the certainty that, in a world of complex obligations, deadlines will be missed. The digital clock will always strike midnight. The algorithms will always scan the ledgers. The fees will be assessed, added to the balance, and processed. It is a continuous loop, operating beneath the surface of the visible economy. While the individual focuses on the specific date on the calendar, the system focuses on the aggregate flow of capital. It transforms the concept of lateness, a temporal measurement, into a currency. It is a reminder that in the modern financial architecture, time is not just a resource to be managed, it is a product to be sold and a rule to be enforced. The structure remains in place, indifferent to the reasons for the delay, functioning exactly as it was designed to do. The transaction clears, the penalty posts, and the cycle resets, waiting for the next deadline to approach.